Good afternoon. Today we will be discussing Heat, a short story by Joyce Carol Oates. But first, let me introduce myself. I am Eve Sedgwick, and I will be using the light of lesbian and gay criticism to better see and understand this piece of literature and its gender and sexuality perspective.
What exactly is lesbian gay criticism?
Well, lesbian gay criticism makes sexual orientation a fundamental category of analysis and understanding. Sexuality is not seen merely as natural and unchanging, but rather a construction and a continually evolving subject.
So in ways, lesbian or gay criticism is similar to feminist criticism, since they both share a gender-based goals and a continually evolving subject.
Correct. Though instead of focusing on gender, lesbian gay criticism focuses on forming the resisting society about homophobia and heterosexism, as well as the ideological and instructional practice of heterosexual privilege.
I can think of a couple of times in the story that this type of criticism it appears, such as the twins' doll-like description as they lay in their caskets.
This is a great example of lesbian gay criticism, that it represents the gender identity's role that is woven throughout the story. The idea is that a kind of impersonation and approximation happens when society assigns stereotypical roles to genders, a kind of imitation for which there is no original.
The originals would be Rhea and Rhonda, while they were still living. The two red-haired, freckled, piercing eyes, troublesome twins that steal from the grandmother and overpower their friends.
So then the imitations are what the community creates from their dead bodies. Two dolls, perfect as plastic in white satin-lined caskets, resembling that of fancy candy boxes. The story even goes on to state that their perfect little doll faces were almost beautiful when their freckles powdered over and rouge on their cheeks and mouth.
How about when the narrator informs the reader that the twins' lower parts didn't show in the casket? The strong sense that a woman's purity keeps her whole, and without it she will die.
Those are all great examples. And how about this? Another would be the overly masculine description of Roger Whipple in Oates' story.
I did notice that when reading. Oates describes Roger as a big, sweet-faced boy with these big hands and feet, thighs like hams, in fact. The description makes Roger seem strong and overly masculine, deterring one from questioning his sexuality.
These descriptive compensations are enough to encourage the reader to question society's stereotypical roles placed upon gender identification, in hopes to show that appearances and actions do not directly relate to one's gender.
Would this have anything to do with the overcompensation to confirm one's own sexuality, as exemplified by the narrator in the last 5 paragraphs of the story?
It may be related to this as well as other topics within lesbian gay criticism, such as the visions of Zimmerman's formulation in the case best relating to the third grouping of lesbian vision, creating an undertone of questioned sexuality as a force against the rigid definitions and polar oppositions typically related to lesbianism.
Would this also be a point that exposes homophobia found in mainstream literature?
Yes, though typically the critics expose this through analyzing the omission of homosexual content in a piece of literature. I suppose this overcompensation of the narrator to assure the reader of her sexual standing could be considered as the narrator taking action to ignore homosexual aspects of the story. The narrator refuses to tell the reader her sexual partner's name, saying his name is not one I say anymore, leading the reader to question if her partner was really a man. Could the partner have been a woman? Or maybe she cheats on her husband with other men because she is not attracted to the male figure, but for fear of society's overcasting views, she jumps around, hoping to find someone who satisfies her.
You know what? The narrator even goes on to say that the woman performing these actions was not her, but some crazy woman because she was willing to risk her marriage and her kids, finding out and her life being ruined for such a thing. The narrator could be separating herself from the action because of guilt or because she knows she will never escape the looming dark cloud of her sexuality versus that of the society.
The homosexual aspects that are being ignored by the narrator refer to the section of the story involving both the twins and the narrator, whom all strip under the twins' porch, correct?
Yes, If you recall, the twins coaxed the narrator into an opening beneath the porch of their house, where they forced her to strip naked. The narrator informs the reader that they do not touch her, but tell her that they wanted to see how much power they had over others. They then strip as well, and the narrator finds that if one were to look at their bodies from shoulder down, the three girls could really be the same girl.
The stripping of the three girls could be interpreted as a sexual act in its purest form, simply observing another human being before that person is aware of their sexual tendencies. Or that is a symbolic representation of equality among the girls, a strong bond that exists throughout lesbian feminism, that difference in race, class, and sexual identity cannot affect that which all women have in common, female identity.
Right. And we see this sexualization play out very strongly in the steamy porch scene. Quintessentially, the story embodies the values of lesbian bonding that were espoused long ago by Sappho on the Isle of Lesbos.
Exactly. Unfortunately, I do have to stop this discussion. But with that, a quick recap highlights the importance of lesbian and gay criticism making sexual orientation a category of understanding, which are clearly reflected through the points that we made on Oath. Lesbian and gay criticism is continually evolving, as is our world.